Hare Krishna, welcome everyone. Good to see you all. Tonight we are continuing with our study of Bhagavad Gita as it is by His Divine Grace, A.C.Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Tonight we will continue with chapter 6. We'll finish chapter 6. So we'll start with verse number 33. And if you have any questions or any comments as we go, then please ask. Text number 33. Arjuna said, O Madhusudan, the system of yoga which you have summarized appears impractical and unendurable to me, for the mind is restless and unsteady. So this chapter 6, is entitled Jnana Yoga. Jnana means meditation. Meditation is done with the mind. So we're meant to meditate on Krishna. And Arjuna is saying, because what Krishna has described in this chapter is the process of Ashtanga Yoga, where one sits in a solitary place and meditates on Supersoul, Paramatma, within the heart. Arjuna says, this is very difficult and unendurable for me because most of society is active by nature. We like to be active. We like to do things. It is not, as Krishna says in the 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, we cannot stop from doing something even for a moment. Right? We can't stop doing things. Not even for one moment can we stop doing things. So the mind never stops. We all know that. The mind never stops. It's always thinking of something. Thinking, feeling, and willing. These are the functions of the mind. So because the mind is always thinking, feeling, and willing, and it does not stop, then Arjuna says, this is unendurable for me. This is too difficult. Just to sit down, meditate, right? I can't do this. This is too much, right? It is too much, too difficult. So he's saying, give me an active path. So this chapter is about controlling the mind. It is about making the mind a friend and engaging the mind in Krishna's service. But Krishna, for a lot of the chapter, he speaks about the inactive path, which is not natural for most people in this world. So now Arjuna is questioning that. Arjuna is asking about that. He says, what you have said is impractical and unendurable to me because the mind is restless and unsteady. One of the names of the mind that we find in Sanskrit is chanchala. Chanchala. Chanchala means flickering, unsteady. Money, Lakshmi, is said to be flickering or unsteady. Money comes, money goes. Right? The mind, similarly, is called chanchala, which means flickering. It's unsteady. It comes and it goes. That's the mind. So that is what we hear about within this 3rd chapter, that to control the mind is very difficult. Prabhupada says in the purport that it is not possible for an ordinary man to leave home to practice yoga in this age of Kali. The present age is characterized by a bitter struggle for a life of short duration. Now, Arjuna is speaking 5,000 years ago, just before Kali Yuga began, right? 5,000 years ago. And he's saying the mind, the system of yoga you have described is, it's unendurable for me. It's too difficult to practice. And now Prabhupada is saying now, in this day and age, it's way too difficult to practice. It's not practical for us to practice a platform of mental control like this. It's too difficult. So, that being the case, Prabhupada says, in this age of Kali, the current age that we're in, it is too difficult for an ordinary person to leave home and practice a solitary meditative practice. This age, Prabhupada says, is characterized by a bitter struggle for a life of short duration. Prabhupada and the Bhagavatam, the Gita, the Vedic scriptures, they speak about these things in a very direct way. Right? Very direct. Right? Prabhupada, this is like a sutra. One sentence from Prabhupada, which has a deep truth within it. Prabhupada says, this age is characterized by a bitter struggle. Right? It's such a struggle in this age. I think all of us can attest to that. We struggle, people struggle, society struggles, the world is struggling. It's a struggle in this day, in Kali Yuga. For a life of short duration, we only live 75, 80, 85, 90, 95, 100 years. We don't live for a long time. And we have to struggle so much. So what is the point of this kind of existence? And because it is such a struggle, we need a spiritual practice which is suitable for the time and place. Therefore, Sankirtan Jagya Harinamanukirtanam, the process of congregational chanting of the holy names of Krishna, is the process of purification in this age, because it is most appropriate for the people in this age. It is simple, it is easy and sublime. It's such an easy practice and such an efficient practice, right? It's easy to do Sankirtan, to dance and chant for the pleasure of Krishna, for the pleasure of the deities in this day. It's such an easy process. Prabhupada says even an animal can do it. So easy. And it's so efficient because we don't have a lot of time. It's so powerful that it can take us back to Godhead very quickly and easily. That is the potency of the process. So we're very fortunate in this age of Kali that we have such a process which is so easy that if we practice, we can get extraordinary results very quickly. So text number 34. For the mind is restless, turbulent, obstinate, and very strong. O Krishna, and to subdue it, I think, is more difficult than controlling the wind. A powerful verses spoken by Arjuna regarding the mind. Right? Not an easy thing to do to control the mind. As Krishna says earlier in the chapter, the mind is the best friend or the worst enemy. If you can make the mind the best friend, right, it can help you advance in Krishna consciousness. How do we make the mind the best friend? Right? How do we make our mind the best friend? Right? The mind becomes the best friend when it is attached to serving Krishna. Right? Because the nature of the mind is to become attached, raga dvesha, accepting and rejecting. That's the nature of the mind. The mind accepts it. So when you become attached to things that you accept, that you like to do, you like to engage in, that's what the mind. So if you can make the mind attracted to Krishna, attracted to devotional service, it becomes your best friend, because the mind's always thinking, when can I serve Krishna again? But if we don't conquer the mind, it becomes the greatest enemy. As Arjuna speaks in this verse, he says the mind is restless, right? It's always jumping all over the place. It's hard to control. It's turbulent, right? If your mind's disturbed, we all know this. When your mind is not peaceful, when it's disturbed, when it's turbulent, it's hellish. It's so difficult to control, and it makes our existence completely dissatisfying. Obstinate. You know what it's like when your mind gets attached to something and your intelligence is saying, this is not the right thing to be attached to, and I need to move on from this. But your mind is so attached and your mind is so obstinate and so hard to control. We all have that experience, right? And then once again, it makes life so unpleasant. And the mind is very strong, right? Not easy to deal with the mind. To control the mind takes a great deal of practice. It means you have to become advanced in devotional service. So Arjuna says it's more difficult to control the mind than it is to control the wind, right? And that's a nice analogy, because Arjuna's brother was Bhima. Bhimasena was the son of the wind god. There's one pastime where Bhima ran for a whole night with his 4 brothers, Yudhishthira, Arjuna, Nakula, and Sahadev, and his mother Kunti on his back holding onto him, and he's holding his brothers in his arms and on his thighs, and he ran the whole night like the wind. Such a powerful personality. So we know the strength of the wind. Just like Atulya was telling me yesterday at the farm, was windy. Right? When the wind picks up, it can be scary, it can be frightening. So dealing with the mind can be like that. It's very difficult to control. Easier to control the wind itself than the mind. That's how it feels sometimes. So Prabhupada says in the purport that the easiest way to control the mind, as suggested by Lord Chaitanya, is chanting Hare Krishna in all humility. The method prescribed is Savai Mana Krishna Padara Vindayo. One must engage one's mind fully in Krishna. Only then will there remain no other engagements to agitate the mind. So Prabhupada gives us the most practical and easy instructions. And he gives us the essence of all Vedic knowledge. The easiest way to control the mind, right, is to chant Hare Krishna, following in the footsteps of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his followers, the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan and the Acharyas. Right? If we follow that process, that's the easiest way to control the mind. So we have to engage the mind fully in Krishna. And then it's like when, a nice example Jayapataka Swami gave one time is, just like when the Ganges floods, when the river floods. Like in Mayapur sometimes, the Ganges rises and it floods everything. So all the weeds, the plants, they die. Because, the water is covering everything, nothing can live, so it dies. So similarly, Jayapataka Swami explains that when the river, the tide of Krishna consciousness rises, the more we flood our consciousness with Krishna, all our material desires and all the problems that we hold in our mind, they all become flooded and they die off, because there is no room for material desires and for our all the different thoughts which control our mind perpetually. It's all dissipated. Right? So that's the power. So we have to control the mind. So it mentions here, only then will there remain no other engagements to agitate the mind. When we have so much Krishna consciousness, then the mind cannot be distracted. Text number 35. Lord Sri Krishna said, O mighty armed son of Kunti, it is undoubtedly very difficult to curb the restless mind, but it is possible by suitable practice and by detachment. Very nice point, which is given here by Krishna in the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. You control the mind by practice, abhyas, and detachment, vairagya. Right? It's hard to control the mind. So then, who is the best person to ask? Krishna himself. Krishna is the Adi Guru, the original spiritual master. He is the Parameshwara. He is the creator of everything in this material world. He creates everything. So therefore, because he creates everything, and he is the controller of everything, he's the best person to answer our questions. He created the mind. So now he gives his advice on how to deal with the mind. And he gives two necessary practices to control the mind. One is abhyas, which means practice. You have to practice controlling your mind. Prabhupada's guru, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, used to say, with the mind, you beat the mind 100 times every morning with shoes, and then in the evening, beat the mind 100 times with a broom. So in the morning and the night, you need to beat your mind. That's how you bring it under control. What is that beating of the mind? It's chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. When you chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, you are subduing the mind. You're learning to control the mind, fix the mind on the sweet sound of the holy names of Krishna. So by this practice, right, we gradually, the mind goes off, we bring it back. The mind goes off, we bring it back. And as you practice over years, you learn to bring your mind more under control. And then detachment. Practice and detachment. Vairagya means you have to learn not to take the mind so seriously. The mind comes up with the most improper desires. All sorts of material desires come up in our mind perpetually. Always we have desires floating around in our mind. So these desires, these material desires which come into our mind, we have to detach ourselves from them. Learn not to take them seriously. You have to learn techniques to deal with your mind. Yeah, just like my mind. I've learned over the years, one technique which I've been taught and which I use is the mind will come up with a material desire, say while you're chanting. The mind will come up with a material desire, an option for you. And one thing that I've learned to do is you say to the mind, okay, we will enjoy that. We will indulge in that. We will focus on that, but not now. We'll do it later. Is that okay? And the mind says, that's okay. As long as we get to do it at some point, then okay, I'll leave you alone for now. So you say, okay, we'll do that later. But you know with your intelligence, you know that later will never come. But it's just a technique that we need to learn to use to detach ourselves from the mind. So Krishna says by practice and detachment, you can overcome the mind. Srila Prabhupada says in the purport, the first and foremost of the 9 types of devotional service is hearing.
This is a very powerful transcendental method for purging the mind of all misgivings. The more one hears about Krishna, the more one becomes enlightened and detached from everything that draws the mind away from Krishna. Hearing of Krishna is expert treatment for the mad mind, and prasad is the appropriate diet. This treatment is the process of Krishna consciousness. So Prabhupada gives instruction. Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam. Prabhupada says the first item of bhakti is Shravanam, hearing about Krishna, which is like what we're doing now. We're hearing about Krishna. So we hear about Krishna. Shravanam Kirtanam, we chant the holy names of Krishna. And hearing and chanting lead to Vishnu Smaranam, remembering Krishna. So that is the process. We practice hearing and chanting about Krishna. That leads to Smaranam, or remembering Krishna. The goal is to always remember Krishna and never forget him. Text number 36. For one whose mind is unbridled, self-realization is difficult. But he whose mind is controlled and who strives by appropriate means is assured of success. That is my opinion. So our mind is unbridled. When it's not controlled. Yeah, the nice example we're given, Vedic example, that the senses are like horses, 5 powerful horses. And the reins, which are connected to the horse and connected to the driver, that is the mind. The mind controls where the senses go. And the intelligence is the driver of the chariot, right? He has control of the mind. He's holding the mind. So sometimes, the senses are very powerful. The mind enjoys through the senses. The mind wants to go where the senses go. But the intelligence says, no, this is not good for our spiritual progress, and pulls the mind and controls the senses. So it is being mentioned here that the mind sometimes feels unbridled. If you don't have control of the senses and the mind, your life becomes chaotic. You become disturbed in your consciousness. So he who has controlled the mind and strives by appropriate means is assured of success. So Krishna here is giving us instructions on how to control the mind so that we can progress in our Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada says in the purport, yoga practice without mental control is a waste of time. Therefore, one must control the mind by engaging it constantly in the transcendental loving service of Krishna. Unless one is engaged in Krishna consciousness, he cannot steadily control the mind. So we have to engage the mind. Rishikena, Rishikesha, Sevanam Bhakti Uchate. The senses want to enjoy. They want engagement. Right? We want to smell things. We want to taste things. We want to touch things. We want to hear things. We want to see things. Right? The senses always want to engage in enjoyment of the sense objects. And the mind enjoys through the senses. Right? Everything we enjoy in life through our senses is enjoyed in our mind. So the mind needs engagement, the senses need engagement. So we have to engage our senses and our mind in the service of Krishna. And that's how we become purified in our Krishna consciousness. Text number 37. Arjuna said, "O Krishna, what is the destination of the unsuccessful transcendentalist who in the beginning takes to the process of self-realization with faith, but who later desists due to worldly-mindedness and thus does not attain perfection in mysticism?" Right? So this is an important point. I think it's a question that Arjuna asks to Krishna, because Arjuna, all the questions that Arjuna asks in the Bhagavad Gita and all the answers that Krishna gives are for our benefit. Right? They're for our benefit. Arjuna did not need to hear the Bhagavad Gita as much as we do. So sometimes we may have this doubt. It's a very good question. The question is, what is the destination of the unsuccessful transcendentalist? Right? In other words, if we do not become fully Krishna conscious in this lifetime, if we're not able to overcome many of our material desires, then what will take place? If we're not able to overcome our material desires, what will happen? What will happen if we're not able to overcome our material desires is we may have to take birth again in this material world. Right? We become an unsuccessful yogi. Right? And that can be a great concern. And that may be a question that many of us ask, or a fear that many of us may have. What if I don't make it and I have to take birth again in this material world? So Arjuna is asking this question primarily for our benefit. Srila Prabhupada says, out of the three methods, the path of Bhakti Yoga is especially suitable for this age because it is the most direct method of God realization. So there are different methods to attain Krishna, right? Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga. different methods are given to attain perfection, or to elevate the consciousness in this material world. But the most effective is Bhakti Yoga, devotional service to Krishna. Srila Prabhupada says, if we can just chant 16 rounds a day attentively and follow the 4 regulative principles, which is not that easy for people in Kali Yuga, if we can do this, then we can go back to Godhead at the end of this lifetime. Prabhupada said he will come and take us back to Godhead. So the practice of Bhakti Yoga is so powerful that if we just practice it sincerely, if we follow our initiation vows sincerely, and we practice the practices of devotional service sincerely in this lifetime, we can go back to Godhead at the end of this lifetime. That's how powerful it is. Text number 38. O mighty armed Krishna, does not such a man who is bewildered from the path of transcendence
fall away from both spiritual and material success, and perish like a riven cloud with no position in any sphere. So this is a doubt that many of us may have. What happens if I'm unsuccessful in this lifetime? What happens if I make advancement but I don't become fully purified? What is my destination? So Arjuna is asking this question for us. Prabhupada says, the supermost path of transcendental realization is Bhakti Yoga, or Krishna consciousness, the direct method. If we just follow this process that Prabhupada has given us, just in this one lifetime, I've listened to thousands of hours of my Guru Maharaj, His Holiness Tamil Krishna Maharaj. Thousands of hours I've listened to his lectures over the years, and he tells many pastimes of his time with Prabhupada, many instructions he was given by Prabhupada. But the pastime that he tells the most, that I've heard him speak about the most over the years, is that he was on the balcony in Juhu, in the towers in Juhu, in Mumbai. And he was sitting on the balcony with Prabhupada, and he was complaining, oh, Prabhupada, because they were fighting a court case to win the Juhu land. So he was complaining to Prabhupada, oh, Prabhupada, we have to go to the lawyer's office every day, and, I know the municipality codes of the city of Mumbai, I've memorized them, but I haven't memorized the verses in the Bhagavad Gita. And he was complaining to Prabhupada, oh, it's so difficult and we're doing it. And Prabhupada was listening. But then at one point, Prabhupada cut him short and said, for so many lifetimes, you have worshipped so many masters. In this one lifetime, just worship, give up worshipping all those other masters and just worship the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And whatever you are lacking, at the end of your life, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will come, he will cover that, and he will take you back to God. So this is very reassuring, that if we just give this one lifetime to the best of our ability to serving Krishna, at the end of our life, we will be taken back to Godhead. This is my doubt, O Krishna, and I ask you to dispel it completely. But for you, no one is to be found who can destroy this doubt. So Prabhupada says in the purport, Arjuna wants to know the future of the unsuccessful transcendentalist. No one is equal to or above Krishna. Therefore, the verdict of Krishna is the final and complete answer to all doubts, because he knows past, present, and future perfectly, but no one knows him. Krishna and Krishna conscious devotees alone can know what is what. So Krishna points out, Arjuna points out, Arjuna is asking Krishna, right? But for you, no one can answer my queries properly. Krishna is the Adi Guru, the original spiritual master. Right? And Prabhupada points out in the purport, only Krishna and Krishna's representatives can fully eradicate our doubts. So Arjuna is teaching us the basic principles. Shishasteham, satimam, tvam prapanam.
Arjuna, in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, surrendered unto Krishna. Krishna, now I am your disciple. I am a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. So each one of us is in a similar position. Krishna, I am a soul surrendered to you. Please instruct me. Right? It takes this humility from each devotee. When we approach Krishna or Krishna's representatives, we have this mood, right, of surrender, of faith that they will eradicate our doubts. And if we have this mood, then we will transcend our difficulties in this material world. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O son of Pritha, a transcendentalist engaged in auspicious activities does not meet with destruction either in this world or in the spiritual world. One who does good, my friend, is never overcome by evil. So Krishna begins to give his answers now to Arjuna's inquiry. Prabhupada explains, the Bhagavatam assures the unsuccessful transcendentalist that there need be no worries. Even though he may be subjected to the reaction for not perfectly executing prescribed duties, he is still not a loser, because auspicious Krishna consciousness is not forgotten, and one so engaged will continue to be so, even if he is low-born in the next life. So we need not worry. If we are sincerely engaged in the service of Krishna, Krishna will deliver us. We will have an auspicious next life. We may even transcend this material world by the grace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and be taken back to Godhead, to Goloka Vrindavan. Krishna consciousness is so auspicious that whatever advancement we make, it stays with us into the next life. And then we can just continue to take off from where we left off. Right? One time I was in Adelaide many years ago, and one new person, he asked Devamrita Swami, he said to Devamrita Swami, what will you be doing in your next life? And Maharaj said, I will be doing the same thing that I'm doing in this life, which is teaching others about Krishna. So we teach others about Krishna. We dedicate our life to serving Krishna. In our next life, we'll just continue. And if we're very fortunate, we will transcend and we'll go back to Godhead. The unsuccessful yogi, after many years of enjoyment on the planets of the pious living entities, is born into a family of righteous people or into a family of rich aristocracy. So Prabhupada explains in the purport that the real purpose of yoga is to achieve Krishna consciousness, as explained in the last verse of this chapter. So the family of, if we can't perfect our devotional service in this life, Krishna says we will take birth in our next life. If we can't go back to Godhead, if we're not sufficiently purified, but we've been sincerely practicing devotional service, we'll take birth in our next life in a family of righteous people or into a family of rich aristocracy. In other words, we'll be born into a situation where we don't have material discomfort and we are given facility We don't have to worry about the material things in life because we're given material facility. And then we can just focus on our service to Krishna. So if we're not purified fully, we'll take birth again, but we'll have an opportunity to serve Krishna once again. So Prabhupada explains in the purport that if we do engage in devotional service, we will go back to Godhead. We will attain perfection. So we should have that faith that if we sincerely give this one life to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, at the end, he'll cover whatever we're lacking, he'll take us back to Godhead. Or, if unsuccessful after long practice of yoga, he takes his birth in a family of transcendentalists who are surely great in wisdom. Certainly such a birth is rare in this world. Right? So we will take birth in a devotee family. Right? If you do take birth in a devotee family, what does that mean? That means that you were practicing devotional service in your previous life, right? And you're taking up the process from where you left off in the previous life. So Prabhupada explains in the purport, birth in a family of acharyas or Goswamis, those with great wisdom, is praised herein because the child born in such a family receives a spiritual impetus from the very beginning of his life. Such families are very learned and devoted by tradition and training, and thus they become gurus. By the grace of Krishna, there are still families that foster transcendentalists. So if we're very fortunate, actually the Prabhupada continues, by the grace of Krishna, there are still families that foster transcendentalists generation after generation. It is certainly very fortunate to take birth in such a family. So if we're very fortunate, if we don't go back to Godhead in the next life, then Krishna explains we'll take birth in a family of devotees who are advanced in Krishna consciousness themselves, and they will assist us to go back home, back to Godhead. Text number 43. On taking such a birth, he revives the divine consciousness of his previous life, and he again tries to make further progress in order to achieve complete success, O son of Kuru. So we take birth again. If we're not able to go back to Godhead, we take birth again, hopefully in a family of devotees. And wherever we left off, that will reawaken and we'll take off from that point once again, which we see happens to many devotees. Prabhupada explains in the purport, transcendental endeavors never go in vain. By the grace of Krishna, the transcendentalist gets repeated opportunities for complete perfection in Krishna consciousness. So, Krishna has already explained this in chapter 2. Even by performing a little bit of devotional service, it guarantees us a human birth. And if we've performed a great deal of devotional service, if we don't transcend, we will take birth in a family of devotees. Everything will be reawakened, and then we'll start off from where we left off in this life. Text 44, by virtue of the divine consciousness of his previous life, he automatically becomes attracted to the yogic principles, even without seeking them. Such an inquisitive transcendentalist stands always above the ritualistic principles of the scriptures. And Prabhupada explains in the purport that advanced yogis are not very much attracted to the rituals of the scriptures, but they automatically become attracted to the principles of Krishna consciousness or engage in chanting the holy name, the highest yoga, perfection. So we take up devotional service again in this life from where we left off, and we become automatically attracted to the principles of bhakti, to devotional service, to devotional activities. Text number 45. And when the yogi engages himself with sincere endeavor in making further progress, being washed from all contaminations, then ultimately achieving perfection after many, many births of practice, he attains the supreme goal. Prabhupada explains a person born in a particularly righteous, aristocratic, or sacred family becomes conscious of his favorable condition for executing yoga practice. With determination, therefore, he begins his unfinished task, and thus he completely cleanses himself of all material contaminations. When he is finally free from all contaminations, he attains the supreme perfection, which is Krishna consciousness. So, Krishna further explains this point. Many, many births we may have taken, and we may keep coming back, and we may keep engaging in devotional service. But if we join ISKCON, which we've done, and if we dedicate our lives to spreading Krishna consciousness to others, we have a very good chance of transcending this material world once and for all. Text number 46. A yogi is greater than the ascetic, greater than the empiricist, and greater than the fruitive worker. Therefore, O Arjuna, in all circumstances, be a yogi. Right? And Prabhupada explains, Bhakti Yoga is full spiritual knowledge, and therefore nothing can excel it. Therefore, the most highly praised form of yoga mentioned here is Bhakti Yoga. And this is still more clearly explained in the next verse. So, what is the topmost yoga system? The word yoga means to unite, to connect with something higher than ourselves. So there are many different yoga systems: Jnana Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, Karma Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, different systems. Krishna gives his verdict in the Bhagavad Gita of all the yoga systems. The best is the Bhakti Yoga system, or the process of devotional service. And that will be explained in the final verse of this chapter, which we will read now. And of all yogis, the one with great faith who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself, and renders transcendental loving service to me, he is the most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all, that is my opinion. So Krishna gives his final opinion within in this verse of the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna's opinion is of all types of transcendentalists, of all people following a spiritual path, the topmost, the highest, is the bhakti yogi or the devotee of Krishna. Right? Because that is the most complete and perfect way to please God, to please Krishna. Now, in this verse, Krishna remembers his devotee, and that puts Krishna himself, God himself, when he remembers his devotee, it puts him into a state of great ecstasy. And therefore, the next verse Krishna will speak will be the first verse of chapter 7. And chapter 7 to 12 are the Bhakti Yoga chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, the essential chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. So Krishna remembers his devotee and he becomes spiritually ecstatic, and then he becomes inspired to speak directly about Bhakti Yoga. So that is the next chapter. So that is the first 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. Now we will have an exam. So I'll write to all of you about that. Your exams are due. We'll do the closed book exam shortly, and we will do the open book exam. So next week, we'll have an overview of the 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. We will do an overview class, and then we'll have the exam, and your essays will be due as well. And then we will go into the second portion of the Bhagavad Gita, which is the Bhakti Yoga portion of the Gita, which is the essential, hidden message of the Bhagavad Gita. So I'll stop there. Are there any questions or comments on anything we have discussed? Okay, thank you all for coming, and we'll see you next week. Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Bol.